Welcome back to the channel. We are going to be installing steel ring and pinion gears on our TRX4MT. We installed the brushless Traxxas system in here, and the differentials did not even last a day. So we ordered some steel hardened helical diffs, and I'm going to take you through the install. So we'll remove the body, and we'll get these tires out of the way, and we will start working our way through the install. So here we go. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at the 4 screws here. We need to gain some access to those. So what we're going to do is loosen up these side screws, and we'll get these links moved out of the way. So we'll begin by just removing the screw on both sides. Before we do that, just want to talk about this tool here. The only tool that you really need for most of this project, it's a 1.5 millimeter hex screw. We're going to remove the 2 screws from the lower links. We'll pivot those out of the way, and then what we'll do is move on our way to the drive shaft yoke. We'll remove the single screw here, and we'll go ahead and slide the drive shaft off. Now it gives us adequate clearance to remove the 4 screws on the diff. We can then remove the diff case cover. Now we can see the gears. All right, we're going to remove these 2 screws that hold the axle shafts in place. Okay, we'll slide the axle shaft out. The 2 shafts are the same size on each side, so you don't have to worry about them going back on a certain side of the truck. It doesn't matter, they're exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and remove this upper link screw here so we can set the axle down on the table and work on it a little easier, just to try to keep things nice and simple. The gears will come right out now. We're going to go ahead and rotate the axle over. We'll pop the pinion gear out. Just apply a little pressure, and it should slide right off of the axle. Now, if you go to push these bushings out, just going to want to apply even pressure to each side of it so they don't get kind of like twisted in there. You just want to push them out evenly. If we rotate the axle over, you can push the inner bearing out, well, the inner bushing out. Just kind of work your way around it, and they'll pop right out. All right, we're going to go ahead and pop a couple of these bearings in place. I already placed the bearing on the pinion, so there's a bearing on that side, and there's a bearing on the other side. 2 bearings on the pinion, one inner and one outer. Just go ahead and push it in place, and then you just make sure that you give it a little press to make sure it's seated all the way. To kind of put everything together to do a dry fit, make sure everything fits the way it's supposed to before I apply all the grease to the bearings. And what I noticed is that honestly the fit and finish on this portion of the parts is excellent. There's really no play. They felt like they mesh well. Everything spins nice and freely. So that's a good deal. I use this Lucas grease. I apply it to the gears fairly liberally. It protects the gears from corrosion and also provides adequate lubrication for them. They should last a long time as long as we apply enough grease in there. And you really can't use too much. It's fine if you coat them thoroughly. I can't say enough about this Lucas heavy duty grease. This stuff is super tough, and it actually works well in like some high temp environments. So you don't have to worry about this this stuff like slinging off. It'll do a good job coating the gears. So just go crazy in there. Put that get that grease all over. No worries. Okay, so got the gears coated pretty well. I'll put the gears together. Everything's kind of lined up in there. Give them a couple of spins just to make sure that it's applied evenly across the gears, and we'll go ahead and reinstall the diff cover. Place the 4 screws back on there, and just a tip, when I install these screws, I kind of go in reverse a little bit, and I try to find the threading that was there from the factory, because every time you thread these screws in, you're kind of cutting a new thread into the housing, and the plastic is kind of soft, and there's really not a lot of material there. So my suggestion is kind of back the screw up when you push it into place, and find the channel that the threading is already cut, and then just kind of put it back in its original position in the housing. I try to do this as often as possible when I'm working with plastic parts. It's just you just get better results, and they don't strip out nearly as easily. So these don't need to be super tight, so just snug them in place, and they should be good to go. Just for good measure, I apply a little grease to the axle shafts. My son Maddox tends to get a little crazy when he's driving the trucks, and they may find themselves in some water. So just applying the grease to the axle shafts and all the components on the inside will just give you a little extra protection. It also is good to reduce friction everywhere you can. Well, it helps that little motor pull the truck well. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the 2 screws that keep the axle shafts in place. So again, you don't need to go crazy with tightening these screws. Just try to get them seated, and then just snug them, and that will be more than enough. We'll spin the axle around, pop the other axle shaft in. Again, it doesn't really matter which side you put these axle shafts on. They're both the same, so no big deal there. Okay, so now that we've got everything back together, just spin the pinion gear and spin the axle shafts, and make sure everything runs freely and there's no binding or friction, and we'll be good to go. We're going to go ahead and install the upper control links on this axle, just because this will be the easiest point to access that. It's going to be a little tight if you do this after. So we're going to go ahead and put that in, and then we'll pivot the axle into place, and we'll put the axle, I guess, the axle supports on. So we got that. We'll go ahead and rotate this down, and there's actually a little gap on the top of those clips, and it bridges the axle support that's on the top of the axle housing. They clip right in place, kind of holds itself in place, makes it nice and handy. This is where we actually start to run into some problems with the parts that we had bought. So at this point, I would put this axle shaft in place, and we realize immediately that there is a defect with the parts. So the parts, there's a hole. The hole that the screw that holds that axle shaft in place is actually not drilled properly. It's actually undersized, and I had seen that on some of the reviews that were left when I bought it on Amazon. I didn't realize that. I just assumed that maybe they got a bad batch, but we did too. So what we ended up having to do here is, I didn't want to send them back because it was gonna, nobody wants to wait. So I ended up drilling out the pinion with a 1/16 inch drill bit. Now it's hardened steel, just wanted to put that out there. So you want to make sure you have a decent drill bit if that's the path that you're going to choose. I would just suggest buying a different set of gears, something maybe factory or Traxxas. But that screw will not fit in that pinion hole until I ended up having to drill it out. So I'm not going to lie to you, I was fairly frustrated that had to happen, but it's not the craziest thing that I've seen in RC. So we just kind of adapt and overcome. So I drilled the pinion out. I actually did it before this clip, so don't think that it was just that little drilling motion that you saw there that got through there. It was a little bit of a pain in the ass to do, I mean, it's not the end of the world. We were able to get through. I would just suggest staying away from these gears. So, in all fairness, the fit and finish on the gears, the rest of the gears was excellent. I was impressed with the machining, but you know, I guess they didn't get it all right. So, so I drilled it out. And anyways, I didn't have any problems with the rest of the assembly. I ended up doing the same on the front drive shaft. So, so that works. Now, I don't know if maybe they were supposed to ship it with a different screw. They didn't. So we just made the original hardware work. At this point, I go ahead and slide the slip shafts back together, and then we go ahead and pivot the we're going to go ahead and pivot those lower control arms back in place. You know, for whatever reason, I was having an off day, but it seemed to fight me a little more than usual for whatever reason. So once you get those in place, go ahead and snug them up, and then we'll go ahead and flip over and do the other side. Pop that one in place. So we'll pop the screw in this side, and then we're done with the lower links. That pretty much completes the install for the rear diffs. It's not too bad, mind you. You know, if you don't have to drill out the pinion gear, it would be a lot quicker. But that's really all that's entailed in doing that. We're gonna go move on to the front the front axle. So we'll knock that one out. It's pretty much the same as the back. I mean, it's exactly the same as the back. The only difference is you've got to deal with the knuckles on the front and the steering link. So if you want to watch a little bit, I'll kind of walk you through it. What I did was I try to take apart as little as possible when I'm doing these things. But I did remove the upper and lower screw from the knuckles, and I was able to pull it aside at this point here, and then and notice that you don't have enough freedom to go ahead and pull them out of the way, so you have to take the steering link that's connected to the servo horn. You have to take that screw out of the way as well. So we'll go ahead and pull the two screws off of this knuckle, and then I will show you where we have to remove the steering link on the front here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and remove these lower links since we're right here. So we're going to pull the screw off of this side, pull the screw off the other side, and then we'll go ahead and remove the pinion screw as well. So we'll rotate those out of the way, kind of make some room here. Get these links aside, and we'll go ahead and, like I said, we'll unscrew the pinion stub there. Like I said before, we did have to drill out the front pinion. Again, that's kind of annoying, but I will say at the end of all of this, these gears actually function very well. We've tested the truck; it's been running great. There's the steering servo. That's the way that they mounted it. It's kind of a neat setup there. Initially, we were going to start pulling all of it apart, but notice that if we just take the lower link screws out of the way, I'm sorry, these are the upper link screws. We'll pull that out of the way. You pretty much have enough leeway without having to disconnect the steering servo to work on the front diff. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that steering link off. You don't have to take both sides off. I pulled the one off and then I just disconnected it from the servo horn, and everything kind of came apart at that point. So it was enough to kind of gain access to the housing. So we'll remove that screw, and then you can kind of see that you can actually remove all of the axle hardware there. The knuckles and the drive shafts basically come right off and are out of your way. We're going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws from the diff here. And pull the diff cover. So the 2 axle shafts will kind of move out of the way, and you can kind of repeat what we did on the other side. Everything is kind of free and clear. So we pulled the ring out, and now we'll just go ahead and push the pinion through, and we'll repeat what we did on the back side. Push out these bushings. Just remember to try to push on all the exterior edges of that bearing or bushing evenly, so that we don't cause any damage to the housing. And it don't really require too much pressure. They come out fairly easy. So there are the crap plastic gears. Go ahead and toss those in the garbage. And you notice that on the ring and pinion that the teeth are straight. On the new style, they're kind of curved. It's a helical style gear. They have more surface area and provide greater strength over the straight teeth. I'm gonna go ahead and cover these up with some grease. Get that all kind of spread out nice and evenly, and then we'll go ahead and pop these in as well. Here I kind of give you a little side-by-side comparison of the straight gears versus the helical gears. So those are the straight teeth. You notice that they just go straight out, and that's how they kind of made up. They are plastic, so just not able to withstand the beating that brushless system will provide. Here, these helicals, they have much greater mesh, more surface area, and obviously they're hardened steel. So I can't imagine any world where that little brushless system will be able to break these. So that should resolve the gear braking issue. I slide the bearing on there on that pinion. We're going to go ahead and install it just like on the rear set. Go ahead and slide that in place, and then we'll place the bearing on the other side. Get them seated nice and good, and then we'll go ahead and place in the ring gear. Everything spins as it should, nice and smooth. Go ahead and put the cap back on, get the cover on there, and pop the 4 screws in. Okay, so everything appears to be spinning pretty freely. Let me show you what we experienced on the rear axle. I've got the yoke screw here, and you'll notice that it will not push through that hole. So we ended up again having to drill that out with a 1/16 drill bit, and honestly it works fine after that. So all right, we'll move on. So we'll put the diff cover back on. I'll look at the other side here, and we'll place the four screws back in place. Just again, use caution when you're tightening these screws back up. Gonna use a little movie magic here and speed through this process. So now that the screws are in there, I'm gonna kind of show you the process that I went through for drilling this pinion out. This is a more accurate representation of what it looked like. So just kind of held it in place and slowly ran the drill bit through. Once I got done, you know, everything works as kind of the way it was supposed to be designed to work. Not the end of the world. So I'm gonna go ahead and place the knuckles back in place, just like this. And then we will place the upper and lower screw on the knuckles. These are the shoulder bolts that you use for the C knuckles. So, you know, when you install these, the one thing I would tell you is, again, don't over tighten these because you can cause binding. You can actually force these to seat further than they need to, and it will cause your steering to bind. So, just a little note there. We'll go ahead and put the screw back in that holds it to the steering servo horn. We'll pop that back in place, and again, with the steering stuff, you just want to, you don't want to go crazy on some of the steering as far as tightening. So what I would suggest is, after you get all of your steering screws back in place, just kind of push the steering back and forth a little bit. Make sure you don't feel any binding. These little servos kind of struggle, especially the factory ones, as it is. So now that we've got the axle all back together here, what we're going to do is we're going to start connecting these upper control links, and we're going to fight to get you a decent shot of it. But I'm not going to lie to you, this is it's more challenging than it looks. It's just such a confined space. My wife is a saint, and she is struggling to try to get a decent shot. But essentially, same as the back, we're just going to slide the upper links in there. It's the one screw that holds both upper links in place. So we'll get that on and get that snugged up. It is a little bit of a pain in the ass to try to get that screw pushed through both of those links. You can see that we're kind of trying to shimmy to get the camera shot and get the screw through both of those links all at the same time. So, but we do eventually get it worked out. So that's tightened out. We pop these little C clips on. I think these are neat, by the way. Just makes it really easy to get the shocks out of the way when you have to work on the truck. And then we'll put the lower links on. We'll pop a screw in here. Maybe, maybe not. Definitely on the struggle bus today. Get that tightened down, and we'll go ahead and install the other link. All right, now that we've got all that installed, we are about done. So what we're going to do is I'm going to spin the little brushless motor a few times and just check the rotation of all of the axles. Everything's going in the right direction, and it feels like it is spinning freely with no bind. So we're going to do a hyper speed tire installation montage here, and that will take us to our testing phase. These things all work out good? All right, sounds good. I don't hear any grinding noises. Everything sounds really good. So it sounds like they'll work out fine. We'll see how durable they are. My Maddox will be doing all of the drive testing on this one. He'll beat this thing up. So All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and do our next segment, which will be gonna replace the transmission gears with these, and probably just go ahead and release that as a separate video because this one has gotten pretty long. So we'll go ahead and do this one next. But for now, this truck is done, and that's it. Appreciate you for tuning in and going on this journey with us. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.